The human fleet did not wait for the aliens to reach Earth. 3 days before the HFY Armada was supposed to arrive, Admiral Morrison moved his 12 ships to the asteroid belt between Mars and Jupiter. He had no intention of fighting a normal space battle. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez sat at her station on the USS Defiance, working with equipment that looked like it came from a junkyard. She had taken apart mining robots, communication satellites, and even old weather stations. Now she was putting them back together in new ways. "Admiral," she said, "the decoy drones are ready. We have 300 of them spread across 12 star systems. Each one is broadcasting fake engine signatures that match our ships." Morrison nodded. The plan was simple but risky. Instead of 12 human ships, the alien sensors would see hundreds of targets scattered across a huge area. The HFY would have to split their massive fleet to hunt down all the false contacts. Captain Ben Parker commanded the destroyer USS Vigilant, the smallest ship in the fleet. His job was the most dangerous part of the plan. While the main fleet hid in the asteroids, Parker would take his ship deep into enemy territory to attack supply convoys. "Remember, Ben," Morrison said over the communication link. "Hit fast and run faster. Don't try to be a hero. We need information more than we need dead aliens." Parker's voice crackled back through static. "Understood, sir. Vigilant is moving out now." The destroyer was only 300 meters long, tiny compared to the massive HFY warships, but Parker had spent 10 years flying patrol ships in the outer colonies. He knew how to hide in space and strike without warning. 2 days later, the alien Armada arrived at the edge of the solar system. Captain Lisa Grant watched the sensor readings with growing amazement. "My God," she whispered. "Look at the size of those ships." The HFY flagship was over 5 kilometers long, bigger than most space stations. The smaller escort ships were still twice the size of the USS Defiance. Energy readings showed shield generators powerful enough to protect entire cities. But Admiral Morrison was not looking at the ships. He was watching their formation. "They're splitting up exactly like we hoped," he said. "The aliens see our decoy signals, and they're sending hunting groups to track down each contact." Commander Nina Lewis looked up from her engineering station. She was 34 years old and had been studying captured alien technology for the past week. A lucky patrol ship had found debris from a HFY scout that hit an asteroid. "Sir, I found something interesting about their ships," Lewis said. "The aliens use a central power core that feeds energy to all their systems. It's very efficient, but it has a weakness." "What kind of weakness?" Morrison asked. "If you can overload the power distribution network, the whole ship shuts down for about 30 seconds while safety systems reset. It's like a circuit breaker in an old house," Morrison smiled. "Humans had been dealing with circuit breakers for centuries. How do we overload their system?" "We need to hit them with a very specific type of electromagnetic pulse," Lewis explained. "I can modify our torpedoes to generate the right frequency, but we have to get close." "Maybe 200 meters, Grant shook her head. 200 meters. That's practically ramming distance. No ship can survive that close to a HFY warship." "A big ship can't," Morrison agreed. "But what about a small fast ship with a very brave captain?" Across the asteroid belt, Captain Parker was proving that human ships could be very dangerous when used correctly. The USS Vigilant had just destroyed its 3rd alien supply convoy. Parker used the asteroids like a 3-dimensional maze, hiding behind rocks the size of mountains and striking when the enemy least expected it. The HFY had powerful weapons and strong shields, but their ships were built for open space battles. They were too big and slow to chase a human destroyer through an asteroid field. "Vigilant to base," Parker reported. "Just hit another supply group. Captured some interesting cargo this time." "What kind of cargo?" Morrison asked. "Food, ammunition, and what looks like technical manuals. But the really interesting part is the crew. These aliens are scared, Admiral. They keep talking about how this is impossible. They've never had supply lines attacked before." Morrison nodded. Fear was a weapon just as powerful as guns or missiles. Every successful attack made the aliens more nervous and more likely to make mistakes. Commander Kyle Brooks had his own mission. The young captain took his destroyer USS Lightning into the outer system where HFY scouts were investigating the fake signals from Rodriguez's decoy drones. Brooks found a group of 5 alien ships near Neptune. They were small by HFY standards, only 800 meters long, but they were still much bigger and stronger than his destroyer. "This is crazy," his weapons officer said. "We can't fight 5 ships at once." Brooks studied the enemy formation on his tactical display. The aliens were spread out in a search pattern, each ship several thousand kilometers from the others. They were not expecting to find real enemies out here. "We don't fight 5 ships," Brooks said. "We fight 1 ship 5 times." The lightning accelerated toward the nearest HFY vessel. Brooks kept his ship hidden behind a small moon until the last second, then burst into open space with all weapons firing. The alien ship was caught completely by surprise. Its shields were designed to stop powerful weapons from far away, not multiple small hits from close range. Brooks's missiles and energy beams punched through the weakened shield and damaged the ship's engines. Before the other aliens could react, the lightning was gone, disappearing back into the shadow of the moon. The damaged HFY ship sent distress signals, but by the time help arrived, Brooks was already hunting his second target. Back on the USS Defiance, Rodriguez was monitoring alien communications. The electronic warfare specialist had learned enough of their language to understand basic military chatter. "Admiral, you need to hear this," she said. "The aliens are arguing among themselves. Some of their commanders want to regroup and attack Earth directly. Others want to keep hunting for our ships." Morrison listened to the translated conversations. The HFY had never faced an enemy like this before. In all their previous conquests, enemy fleets had either surrendered immediately or fought direct battles that the aliens always won. They don't know how to fight an enemy they can't see, Morrison realized. Their whole military doctrine is based on overwhelming force and direct confrontation. Captain Danny Carter's voice came over the communication system from his cruiser, USS Relentless. "Admiral, we're in position at the target coordinates. The alien patrol group is approaching our ambush site." Morrison looked at the tactical display. Carter had positioned his ship in the Titan belt, where thousands of small asteroids provided perfect cover. A HFY squadron of 12 ships was moving through the area, investigating another fake signal. "Execute the plan, Danny," Morrison ordered. Carter had spent 2 days planting explosives throughout the asteroid field. When the alien ships entered the trap zone, he detonated charges that sent rocks flying in all directions. The HFY ships found themselves in the middle of an artificial meteor storm. Their shields could stop energy weapons and normal missiles, but they were not designed to handle thousands of high-speed rocks hitting from every direction. 3 alien ships lost shield power and took heavy damage. 2 more had their engines knocked out. The USS Relentless emerged from its hiding spot and finished off the damaged ships with conventional weapons. In less than 10 minutes, Carter had destroyed or disabled an entire HFY squadron. "Relentless to fleet," Carter reported. 12 enemy ships eliminated. We took no damage. Morrison smiled as he watched the tactical display update. The mighty HFY Armada was being picked apart one piece at a time by tactics they had never seen before. But this was just the beginning. Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Defiance and looked at the stars through the large window. The year was 2387, and everything had changed 3 days ago when Earth received its first message from aliens. The message was simple and scary: surrender or die. The alien race called themselves the HFY Empire. Their huge fleet had over 3,000 ships, each one bigger than anything humans had ever built. Earth's scientists studied the message and found terrible news. The aliens had technology that was hundreds of years ahead of human science. They had energy shields that could stop nuclear bombs, plasma guns that could destroy whole cities, and ships that could travel faster than light like it was nothing. Morrison walked across the bridge of his ship. He was 55 years old and had spent 30 years in space. He started as a simple engineer fixing broken parts on old ships. Now he was the admiral of Earth's entire space fleet. But that fleet was tiny compared to what was coming. Captain Lisa Grant came up to him holding a data pad. She was his best tactical officer and had been studying the enemy for 3 days without sleep. Her eyes were red and tired, but her voice was steady. "Sir, I have the final count," she said. "We have 12 ships total. The Defiance is our biggest and strongest. We also have 4 destroyers, 5 cruisers, and 2 support ships. The enemy has more than 3,000 warships." Morrison took the data pad and looked at the numbers. The math was simple and terrible. For every human ship, there were 250 alien ships. No military force in human history had ever faced odds this bad and won. "What about the colonies?" Morrison asked. "Mars is evacuating now," Grant replied. "The outer settlements are already empty. Earth's government wants to move everyone to the far colonies beyond Pluto. They think we can hide there and maybe survive." Morrison nodded, but said nothing. He understood why the politicians wanted to run. Any sane person would run from this fight. But running meant giving up everything humans had built in space. It meant letting the aliens take Earth and all the inner worlds. Commander Kyle Brooks walked over to them. He was the youngest ship captain in the fleet at only 28 years old. His ship was the destroyer USS Lightning, fast but small. Brooks had been quiet since the alien message arrived. "Sir," Brooks said, "I have to ask the question everyone is thinking. How do we win this fight? I mean, really win it?" Morrison looked at the young captain. He saw fear in Brooks's eyes, but also determination. That was good. Fear kept you alive in space battles. Determination kept you fighting when everything looked hopeless. "We don't fight their war, son," Morrison said. "We fight ours," Grant frowned. "What does that mean, sir?" Morrison walked to the big tactical display in the center of the bridge. It showed the solar system with red dots marking where the alien fleet would arrive in 6 days. The aliens were coming from the direction of Alpha Centauri, moving in a perfect formation that looked like a giant spear aimed at Earth's heart. "Look at their formation," Morrison said. "Perfect lines, perfect spacing, perfect order. They've conquered 47 different worlds, and they always fight the same way. Overwhelming force, straight-ahead attacks, total destruction of enemy fleets. That's what makes them dangerous," Brooks said. "No," Morrison replied. "That's what makes them predictable. They've won so many times that they think they know everything about war, but they've never fought humans before." Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her communication station. She was 26 years old and one of the best electronic warfare specialists in the fleet. "Sir, we're receiving messages from the other ship captains. They want to know the battle plan." Morrison smiled for the first time in 3 days. "Tell them we'll meet in the conference room in 1 hour. And Rodriguez sent a message to all ships. We're not retreating. We're not surrendering. We're going to show these aliens what humans do when someone threatens our home." The bridge crew looked surprised. They had all expected orders to fall back to the outer colonies. Instead, their admiral was planning to fight an enemy that outnumbered them by hundreds to 1. Captain Danny Carter's voice came over the communication system from his cruiser, USS Relentless. "Admiral, are you sure about this? Maybe we should consider the evacuation option." "I'm sure, Danny," Morrison replied. "These aliens chose the wrong species to threaten. They think they can scare us into giving up everything we've worked for. They're about to learn that humans don't scare easy." Grant pulled Morrison aside and spoke quietly. "Sir, I have to say this. The odds are impossible. Even if we fight perfectly, even if we get lucky, we probably can't win. Most of us are going to die." Morrison nodded. "You're right, Lisa. The odds are terrible and many of us won't see home again. But here's what those aliens don't understand about humans. We've always been outnumbered. When our ancestors lived in caves, they were outnumbered by bigger, stronger animals. When they crossed oceans in wooden boats, they were outnumbered by storms and monsters. When they fought wars on Earth, the good guys were usually outnumbered by the bad guys." He paused and looked around the bridge at his crew. Young faces, scared faces, but determined faces, and you know what happened every time? Morrison continued. "We found a way to win anyway. Not because we were stronger or had better weapons, but because we were human. We think different. We fight different. We never give up even when giving up makes sense." The bridge was quiet for a long moment. Then Brooks spoke up. "What are your orders, sir?" Morrison walked back to his captain's chair and sat down. "We're going to do what humans do best, Kyle. We're going to survive." 2 weeks after the first attacks, the Kethvari Empire was facing something they had never experienced in 400 years of conquest. Fear. The mighty Armada that had destroyed 47 civilizations was being torn apart by a tiny human fleet that refused to fight fair, Admiral. Morrison stood in the captured alien ship that had become his temporary headquarters. The vessel was 3 times larger than any human ship, with technology that seemed almost magical. But Commander Nina Lewis had spent days studying every system and found the flaws that made it vulnerable. "The power coupling here is the weak point," Lewis explained, pointing to a complex piece of alien machinery. "If we can generate the right electromagnetic frequency, we can cause a cascade failure that shuts down the entire ship." Captain Danny Carter nodded as he examined the alien equipment. His cruiser USS Relentless had captured the ship 2 days ago when a damaged Kethvari vessel tried to hide in the asteroid belt. Now it was providing valuable intelligence about enemy weaknesses. "How many of these special torpedoes can we make?" Morrison asked. With the materials we have, maybe 50, Lewis replied. But each one has to be custom built for the specific type of ship we're targeting. The aliens use different power systems for different classes of vessels. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez looked up from her analysis of captured alien communications. The young woman had become expert at reading Kethvari military transmissions, and what she found was very interesting. "Admiral, the aliens are starting to panic," she reported. "Their commanders are sending messages back to the home fleet asking for reinforcements. They're also arguing about whether to continue the invasion or withdraw to regroup." Morrison smiled. Doubt was spreading through the enemy fleet like a virus. The Kethvari had built their empire on the idea that they were unstoppable. Now they were learning that humans could stop them very effectively. Captain Ben Parker's voice crackled over the communication system from somewhere in the outer asteroid belt. His destroyer USS Vigilant had been conducting hit-and-run attacks for 3 weeks, and the results were impressive. "Fleet Command, this is Vigilant," Parker reported. "Just finished interrogating the crew from that supply ship we captured yesterday. You're not going to believe what they told us." "Go ahead, Ben," Morrison replied. "The Kethvari Empire isn't as united as we thought. They rule over dozens of different alien species, and most of them hate their Kethvari masters. Some of these subject races are only fighting for the Empire because they're forced to." Morrison exchanged glances with his officers. This was the kind of information that could change everything. "Any idea how we can contact these other species?" Morrison asked. "Already working on it, sir. We captured a Kethvari officer who speaks several alien languages. He's been very helpful since we explained that we're not interested in conquering anybody. We just want the Kethvari to leave us alone." Commander Kyle Brooks had been listening to the conversation from his destroyer USS Lightning. The young captain had an idea that was either brilliant or completely insane. "Admiral," Brooks said, "what if we turn some of these subject species against their masters? If we can convince them to rebel, the Kethvari will have to fight wars on multiple fronts." "That's a very dangerous game, Kyle," Morrison warned. "We don't know anything about these other aliens. They might be just as hostile to humans as the Kethvari are." "Maybe," Brooks agreed. "But right now, the enemy of our enemy might be our friend." Captain Lisa Grant had been studying the tactical displays, tracking the movements of the scattered Kethvari fleet. The aliens were regrouping, pulling their forces back from the outer system and forming a defensive line near Mars. "They're changing tactics," Grant observed. "Instead of hunting us down, they're trying to force us into a direct confrontation." Morrison nodded. The Kethvari commanders had finally realized that their traditional approach wasn't working. Now they were trying to use their overwhelming firepower advantage to end the war quickly. "How many ships do they have left in fighting condition?" Morrison asked. "About 2,500, Grant replied. "We've destroyed or disabled nearly 500 enemy vessels, but they still outnumber us by more than 200 to 1. Commander Sophie Williams approached the group with a datapad full of intelligence reports. She was the fleet's specialist in alien psychology and had been studying Kethvari behavior patterns for weeks. "I think I understand why they're regrouping," Williams said. "The Kethvari military structure is very rigid. Individual commanders have very little authority to make independent decisions. When we started using unconventional tactics, they didn't know how to respond because their doctrine doesn't cover this situation. So they're falling back on what they know," Morrison concluded. "Massed formations and overwhelming firepower." "Exactly. But there's something else. I've been analyzing their communication patterns, and I think the Kethvari High Command is starting to doubt whether this invasion is worth the cost." Morrison raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "They expected to conquer Earth in a few days with minimal losses," Williams continued. "Instead, they've been fighting for 3 weeks and have lost hundreds of ships. From their perspective, we're not behaving like a normal enemy. We're fighting like something they've never encountered before." Captain Rick Davis joined the conversation from his position on the bridge of his captured Kethvari cruiser. Davis had taken command of the alien vessel after his own ship was damaged in a battle near Jupiter. Now he was leading a small squadron of captured enemy ships. "Admiral, I have to report something strange," Davis said. "The aliens we captured are asking to join our fleet. They say they want to fight against the Kethvari Empire." Morrison was surprised.
"What species are they?"
"They call themselves the Zoran. They look like big lizards with 4 arms. According to them, the Kethvari conquered their homeworld 50 years ago and have been using them as slaves ever since. When they found out we were fighting their masters, they volunteered to help. This was exactly the kind of opportunity Brooks had been talking about. Morrison made a quick decision. Accept their offer, but keep them under close watch. We need allies, but we also need to be careful. Lewis looked up from her work on the alien power systems. Sir, I have good news. I figured out how to modify our weapons to be much more effective against Kethvari shields. Instead of trying to punch through their defenses, we can make them collapse from the inside. How does it work? Morrison asked. We create a harmonic resonance in their shield generators. It's like hitting a wine glass with exactly the right musical note. The shields don't just fail, they explode and take out the ship's main power grid. Captain Megan Torres had been quiet during the discussion, but now she spoke up. Torres commanded the cruiser USS Phoenix and had been studying the tactical situation from a different angle. Admiral, we have a problem, she said. The Kethvari are moving their remaining ships into a defensive formation around Earth. If we want to attack them, we'll have to fight our way through their entire fleet. Morrison looked at the tactical display showing the enemy positions. The aliens had formed a wall of ships between the human fleet and Earth. It was exactly the kind of battle they wanted to fight and exactly the kind of battle humans needed to avoid. Then we don't attack their fleet, Morrison said. We attack something else, Grant frowned. What else is there to attack, sir? Morrison smiled. Their homeworld. While they're sitting here protecting Earth, we're going to take the war to them. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. Morrison was proposing to attack the heart of the Kethvari Empire, while most of their fleet was thousands of light years away. Sir, Brooks said slowly, that's either the most brilliant plan I've ever heard or the most suicidal. Probably both, Morrison admitted. But it's what they won't expect. And if there's one thing we've learned about fighting aliens, it's that the unexpected is our greatest weapon. The human fleet had grown from 12 ships to over 50 vessels, but most of the new ships were captured alien craft with mixed crews of humans and freed alien slaves. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of a massive Kethvari battleship that was now flying under human command, watching as his unconventional fleet prepared for the most dangerous mission in human history. Captain Alex Morgan had volunteered to lead the covert mission to the Kethvari homeworld. His team consisted of 20 humans and 30 liberated aliens who knew the enemy's language and customs. They would travel in a captured Kethvari transport ship, using forged identification codes to penetrate deep into enemy territory. Remember, Alex, Morrison said over the secure communication link, your job is not to destroy their planet. We're not conquerors. Your mission is to start a rebellion that will force them to recall their fleet from human space. Morgan nodded. He was 32 years old and had spent 8 years working as a spy in the outer colonies before the war started. If anyone could infiltrate an alien civilization, it was him. Understood, sir. We'll broadcast the evidence of Kethvari war crimes across their entire communication network. Once their subject species see proof of what their masters have been doing, they should rise up on their own. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez had spent weeks preparing the information package that Morgan's team would transmit. It contained detailed records of the Kethvari Empire's brutal treatment of conquered worlds, including video evidence from the 47 civilizations they had destroyed. The transmission will hit every major planet in their empire simultaneously, Rodriguez explained. They won't be able to stop it or cover it up. Every alien species under Kethvari control will know the truth about their rulers. Commander Kyle Brooks was leading a different part of the mission. His destroyer USS Lightning would coordinate with rebel groups on a dozen different worlds, providing weapons and tactical support to aliens who wanted to fight for their freedom. We've made contact with resistance movements on 15 planets, Brooks reported. Most of them are weak and poorly organized, but they're eager to fight. They just need someone to show them how. Captain Ben Parker had the most dangerous job of all. His destroyer, USS Vigilant, would attack Kethvari military installations throughout their empire, creating chaos and forcing them to spread their remaining forces thin. I'll hit their communication relays first, Parker explained. Without central coordination, their military commanders won't know where the rebellions are happening or how to respond effectively. The plan was complex and risky, but it played to human strengths. Instead of fighting a direct battle against superior forces, they would use intelligence, deception, and psychological warfare to turn the entire Kethvari Empire against itself. Captain Lisa Grant monitored the enemy fleet positions from the tactical center of the captured battleship, The Kethavari had maintained their defensive formation around Earth for 2 weeks, waiting for the humans to attack. They had no idea that their real enemy was already on the way to their homeworld. "The alien fleet is getting restless," Grant observed. "Their commanders are sending messages to each other questioning why the humans haven't attacked yet. Some of them think we're planning something, but they can't figure out what." Morrison smiled. The Kethavari were used to fighting enemies who behaved predictably. They expected humans to either surrender or mount a desperate attack against their defensive line. The idea that humans might take the war to their home territory had never occurred to them. Commander Nina Lewis had been working with the liberated alien species to understand their technologies and capabilities. The Zoran were excellent engineers, while a species called the Mektar were skilled pilots and navigators. Each group brought unique abilities to the human cause. "Sir, we've completed the modifications to our weapons systems," Lewis reported. "The harmonic resonance torpedoes are ready, and we've upgraded the shields on all our ships with a combination of human and alien technology." Captain Danny Carter tested the new weapons during a small skirmish with a Kethavari patrol near Jupiter. His cruiser USS Relentless fired 6 of the modified torpedoes at an enemy destroyer, and the results were spectacular. "Direct hit," Carter reported. "The enemy shields didn't just fail, they created a feedback pulse that disabled 2 other ships in their formation. This technology is incredibly effective, but the most important development came from an unexpected source. A group of Kethavari officers had approached the human fleet under a flag of truce, requesting a meeting with Admiral Morrison. The aliens were led by a Kethavari commander named Vektar, who claimed to represent a faction within their military that opposed the war. He was a tall reptilian being with golden scales and large, intelligent eyes. "Admiral Morrison," Vektar said through a translation device, "I must speak with you about this conflict. Not all Kethavari support this invasion. Many of us believe that the Empire has become corrupt and cruel." Morrison studied the alien commander carefully. This could be a trick, but the intelligence reports suggested that there was indeed internal conflict within the Kethavari leadership. "What do you propose?" Morrison asked. "A ceasefire while we attempt to resolve this situation through diplomatic means," Vektar replied. "Many Kethavari are horrified by what our military has done to conquered worlds. If you can prove that humans are not the savage barbarians our propaganda claims, we might be able to end this war peacefully." Commander Sophie Williams, the fleet's intelligence specialist, had been analyzing Kethavari communications for weeks. She confirmed that there was a growing peace movement within the alien empire. "Admiral, approximately 30% of their military commanders have expressed doubts about the invasion," Williams reported. "The losses they've suffered have shocked them. They expected to conquer Earth in a few days, not fight a prolonged war against an enemy they can't defeat." Morrison made a difficult decision. He agreed to meet with Vektar and his allies, but he would not call off the mission to the Kethavari homeworld. The peace talks might be genuine or they might be a trap. Either way, humans needed to keep pressure on their enemies. Captain Rick Davis had been working with the captured Kethavari equipment to intercept enemy communications. What he discovered changed everything about how the humans understood their enemy. "Admiral, you need to hear this," Davis said, playing a recorded transmission. "This is a conversation between 2 Kethavari fleet commanders." The translated conversation revealed that the alien military was close to mutiny. Many officers were refusing orders to attack civilian targets, and some were even questioning whether the invasion should continue. "They're falling apart," Morrison realized. The Kethavari built their empire on fear and intimidation, but they've never faced an enemy that fought back effectively. Now their own people are starting to doubt them. Captain Megan Torres had captured another alien ship, this one crewed by a species called the Altani, who looked like tall, blue-skinned humans. The Altani had been forced to serve in the Kethavari military, but they immediately joined the human cause when given the opportunity. "These aliens have been planning a rebellion for decades," Torres reported. "They have secret communication networks on dozens of worlds and stockpiled weapons. All they needed was someone to show them that the Kethavari could be beaten." The liberation of the Altani revealed the true weakness of the Kethavari Empire. It was not held together by loyalty or shared values, but by fear and oppression. Once their subject species realized that the Kethavari were not invincible, the entire structure began to collapse. Captain Pete Jackson coordinated the psychological warfare campaign from his position aboard a captured Kethavari communication ship. He worked with Rodriguez to broadcast messages throughout the enemy empire, showing evidence of human victories and calling for alien species to rise up against their oppressors. The response has been incredible, Jackson reported. We're receiving messages from rebel groups on 37 different worlds. They're asking for weapons, tactical advice, and coordination with other resistance movements. Morrison looked at the tactical display, showing the spreading rebellion across the Keithvari Empire. Red dots marked worlds where uprisings had begun, and the number was growing every hour. Signal all ships, Morrison ordered. Prepare for the final phase of our plan. We're not just going to defeat the Keithvari invasion fleet. We're going to liberate every species they've enslaved. The bridge crew of the captured battleship looked at their human admiral with a mixture of awe and disbelief. In less than 2 months, a tiny human fleet had turned the entire galaxy against the most powerful empire in known space. Captain Alex Morgan's infiltration team had reached the Keithvari homeworld after traveling for 3 weeks through enemy territory. The planet was beautiful from orbit, with blue oceans and green continents that reminded him of Earth. But Morgan knew that this peaceful appearance hid a world built on the suffering of conquered species. Beginning transmission now, Morgan reported to Admiral Morrison across the vast distance of space. We're broadcasting the war crimes evidence to every communication network on the planet. The Keithvari government is trying to block our signals, but we have enough power to overwhelm their jamming systems. On dozens of worlds throughout the Keithvari Empire, alien species were watching the transmissions with growing anger. They saw video records of their people being enslaved, their worlds being destroyed, and their children being taken from their families. The evidence was undeniable and horrifying. Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez monitored the communications traffic from her position on the USS Defiance. The response to Morgan's broadcasts was beyond anything the humans had hoped for. Admiral, we're detecting massive civil unrest on 43 worlds, Rodriguez reported. The subject species are rising up against their Keithvari rulers. Some of the rebellions are already controlling entire cities. Commander Kyle Brooks was coordinating with rebel forces from his destroyer USS Lightning. His ship had become a mobile command center, providing weapons and tactical advice to alien resistance movements across the galaxy. The Zoran have taken control of their home world, Brooks reported with excitement. They've captured the Keithvari governor and his entire staff. The Mektar have seized the main spaceport on their planet and are using captured ships to attack Keithvari installations. But the most important development was happening near Earth itself. The Keithvari fleet that had maintained its defensive formation for weeks was beginning to break apart. Some ships were being recalled to deal with rebellions on their home worlds, while others were crewed by alien species who were mutinying against their Keithvari commanders. Captain Lisa Grant watched the tactical display with amazement as red dots representing enemy ships began changing to green, indicating that they had joined the human alliance. 17 Keithvari vessels have surrendered in the last 6 hours, Grant reported. Their crews are mixed species, and the non-Keithvari members are overpowering their officers and requesting permission to join our fleet. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of his captured battleship, now renamed the USS Liberation, and watched as the most powerful empire in the galaxy tore itself apart. But he knew the war was not over yet. The Keithvari High Command would make one final desperate attempt to maintain their control. All ships, this is Admiral Morrison, he announced over the fleet communication system. The enemy is preparing for a last stand. Intelligence reports indicate that the remaining Keithvari loyalist forces are concentrating near Jupiter for a final attack on Earth. This is our chance to end this war once and for all. The human fleet had grown to over 200 ships, but most of them were crewed by liberated aliens who had limited combat experience. Morrison knew that the final battle would test every skill and trick that humans had learned during the long conflict. Captain Ben Parker's destroyer, USS Vigilant, had been conducting hit-and-run attacks throughout the Keithvari Empire for 2 months. Now he was leading a squadron of captured alien ships toward the gathering enemy fleet near Jupiter. Admiral, the Keithvari have about 800 ships left under their direct control, Parker reported. They're forming up in a traditional battle formation, probably planning to make a straight-line attack on Earth. Morrison smiled. Even after everything that had happened, the Keithvari were still trying to fight the same way they always had. They had learned nothing about facing an unconventional enemy. Signal all ships, Morrison ordered. We're going to give them the battle they want, but not the way they expect it. Captain Danny Carter had been working with Commander Nina Lewis to prepare a special surprise for the HFY fleet. They had loaded 50 cargo ships with the harmonic resonance devices that could collapse alien shield systems, then programmed the ships to operate without crews. The drone ships are ready, Carter reported from his cruiser USS Relentless. We can control them remotely and send them directly into the enemy formation. When they detonate, they'll create a cascade effect that should disable most of the HFY fleet. But Morrison had an even better idea. Instead of using the drone ships as weapons, he would use them as a distraction for the real attack. Captain Julie Stevens commanded a mixed squadron of human and alien ships that had been modified with the latest shield and weapon technology. Her flagship was a captured HFY heavy cruiser that she had renamed the USS Vengeance. "Admiral, my squadron is ready to execute the flanking maneuver," Stevens reported. "We'll come in from behind the asteroid belt while they're focused on your main attack." The final battle began at dawn on a Tuesday morning, Earth time. The HFY fleet accelerated toward Earth in perfect formation, their massive ships gleaming in the light of the distant sun. They expected to face the small human fleet in a traditional engagement that would end with Earth's surrender. Instead, they found themselves fighting an enemy that had learned to use every advantage. The human fleet attacked from 6 different directions at once, using captured alien technology and tactics that the HFY had never encountered. Captain Rick Davis led the first wave of the attack, using a captured HFY command ship to get close to the enemy formation. When the aliens realized the ship was under human control, it was too late. Davis fired the modified harmonic torpedoes at point-blank range, causing a dozen enemy ships to lose their shields simultaneously. Commander Pete Jackson coordinated the electronic warfare assault from his position on the communication ship. He jammed enemy targeting systems while broadcasting surrender demands in a dozen alien languages, causing confusion and panic in the HFY ranks. Captain Megan Torres broke through the enemy battle line with her mixed squadron of human and alien ships. The HFY had never seen their own vessels fighting against them, and the psychological impact was devastating. "Enemy formation is breaking apart," Torres reported. "Multiple ships are signaling surrender. I think their crews are mutinying." The battle that the HFY expected to last for hours was over in less than 30 minutes. Faced with an enemy they could not understand or defeat, the surviving alien ships either surrendered or fled toward the outer system. Admiral Morrison stood on the bridge of the USS Liberation and watched as the last HFY warship powered down its weapons and transmitted a surrender signal. The war was over, but the real work was just beginning. Captain Sophie Williams had been analyzing the communications from the HFY homeworld. The government there had collapsed when the rebellions reached the capital city, and a coalition of liberated alien species had taken control. "Admiral, we're receiving a message from the new leadership on the HFY homeworld," Williams reported. "They want to negotiate a peace treaty and establish diplomatic relations with Earth." Morrison nodded. The humans had won not just a military victory, but something much more important. They had proven that freedom was stronger than tyranny, and that even the most powerful empire could be defeated if its subjects found the courage to fight back. "Signal all ships," Morrison announced. "Stand down from battle stations. The war is over." 6 months later, representatives from 49 different alien species gathered on Earth to sign the Galactic Liberation Charter. The document established the principles of freedom, cooperation, and mutual defense that would govern relations between civilized worlds. Admiral Morrison stood at the podium in the Great Assembly Hall and looked out at the diverse crowd of beings who had come together because humans had shown them that tyranny could be defeated. "We did not start this war," Morrison said in his closing remarks. "We did not want this fight, but when faced with extinction, humanity chose to resist. We chose to fight not just for our own survival, but for the freedom of all sentient beings." He paused and looked at the faces of the alien delegates, many of whom were meeting humans for the first time. "The HFY Empire made one critical mistake," Morrison continued. "They believed that might makes right, that superior technology and overwhelming force were enough to conquer any enemy. But they forgot the most important truth in the universe. The desire for freedom is stronger than any weapon, and the will to resist cannot be defeated by force alone. The assembly hall erupted in applause and cheers from dozens of different species. Outside, children from many worlds played together in the parks of New Geneva, speaking a dozen languages but sharing the same dream of a future free from fear and oppression. In the years that followed, humans would be remembered not as conquerors but as liberators, the species that had faced impossible odds and won through courage, ingenuity, and an absolute refusal to give up. When alien children learned about the war in their history classes, they would always remember the lesson: never count out the humans,